All right. Well, certainly looking forward to this one because we got a lot to look forward to on November 17th at the Maverick Center. And coming out of retirement is everyone's favorite heavyweight, our man, Eric Iman, also a broadcast partner. So we'll get into that a little bit. But Eric, it's great to talk to you, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well.
Yeah. How's life
Yeah,
been post everything that's happened since your last fight? It's been a while.
um, well, better. I had a lot of personal issues that were happening right at that time, and I actually talked to Zach a little bit about it, and he said, we all take fights at the really absolute most inopportune time, and he's right. I think as fighters we tend to think that it's going to focus us, but the problem is, the personal side of it can distract us. So,
did you feel really distracted in that last one?
I felt, well, so in fairness, I had some, not that it's an excuse by any means, but I had some pretty severe medical issues that I was going through at the time. I had some really bad gut health issues. I think 2 weeks after the fight, I had a fairly major surgery, where they had to go in and lance some internal bleeding in my stomach and some stuff like that. And it was horrendous. I was dealing with some anemia issues, which, they actually think COVID made me anemic. But there was a lot going on, not that it's an excuse by any means, but it certainly, that distraction on top of all the other distractions on top of, coming off of a severe loss too, it was a lot. Again, hats off to him. I didn't execute, and that's what it comes down to, regardless of whatever I say. So,
yeah, I kind of wanted to ask you. I mean, you talk about all the things that were going on. Why come back? What was the decision to come back, and when did you make that decision?
I started talking to Zach a little bit about it back in June, and Zach's. I don't know that Zach gets enough credit for the way that he plans these fights out, as far as some of the matchmaking that the team does, and a real plan, and how he really kind of cares for us, as far as, if we do this and you do this, it's like me putting together a career plan for one of my employees, right? Where do I go once this is done? I don't know necessarily, and of course it always hinges on a win, but I mean, this is a fight I've wanted back for a long time. I've talked to a couple of people about it, and they're always, well, how do you feel about it? Do you think you're going to win? Yes, I think I'm going to win. I wouldn't get in there if I didn't think I was going to win. What kind of, don't ask people stupid questions. Yes, I am 100% certain I'm going to win. How about that?
Well, one, I wasn't going to ask you that, but I did want to ask you a little bit about the matchup. I mean, you faced him twice before. Obviously, this is a bidding rivalry. And I think something that really, not to say that you were on the couch, but something that got you up in the morning and something that made you want to work towards, this big goal of facing someone.
It's got me 2 days. It's got me running. I mean, I got out of the house like the house was on fire. I'm training twice a day. I'm back to the old routine when I was in spectacular shape. And there's a lot of history here, right? The first fight, he took the fight on short notice. Here's the caveat to that maybe some know or some don't. At the time, I was supposed to fight super heavyweight because it was my second or third fight, I think, as pro. And we were slated, I was slated as a heavyweight or super heavyweight. I wasn't super heavy, but I want to say I was 285-ish, right in that neighborhood, right? And I'm supposed to fight some guy out of Elko or something. And, as happens with a lot of up and coming heavyweights, the guy disappears. Right? He signs a contract. The promoter's keeping in touch with him. 8 days out, the guy's gone, right? Like Houdini, gone, right? So the promoter wants to keep the fight together, and I'm a damn fighter, so we're gonna fight, right? He says, well, I got this guy for you, but you're gonna have to come down to heavyweight. Well, it was 8 days, so I lost almost 20 pounds in 8 days. Now I did have some training, and I did have a camp, right? But I obviously, it was early in my career. I wasn't prepared for it. It was a great fight. Me and him have shared a lot of cage time now. But I sometimes you don't realize the things, now that I think back on it, you don't realize the things that may get in your head that you may not be very conscious of, right? In 8 days, I lost, it might have been 6 days. I lost the 20 pounds, made weight, had to cut the weight, had never done that before. It was just, a lot of new things. Didn't know anything about him at all. It was just a guy from Idaho. We trained, actually both times, I think we trained completely wrong for him too. But live and learn, and here I am, and I'm an old war horse in a young man's game. So what does that tell you?
We work closely on the broadcast and things like that, so I've kind of seen the evolution of, hey, I'm thinking of coming back, hey, I'm going to take a fight, this is who the opponent is, oh wait, maybe it's going to be this opponent. What was your reaction when it was Luis that was offered to you officially?
I was excited. This is a fight I want to have back. I think my, well, we joke about it a lot at the gym. I never lose a fight I'm not winning. Right. So I'm winning. And then for whatever reason, I get it in my head, I've got to stop it. I've got to stop the fight. I got to end the fight. I got to end the fight. And that's how I fight. If a shark ain't swimming, it's dying. I can't breathe. So I'm constantly engaged. I'm almost always going forward. It's not like me to take a backward step. I think that I have a really good understanding of his game plan, and how he fights. He's going to want to, he usually tries to tie me up, keeps me against the fence. If I'm being frank, he tries to get a breakage from the ref so he can take some time. There's a lot that I know about this guy after 20 or 25 minutes, and he's a tough guy. He swings hard and hits hard. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I know what he wants to do.
When we think back to your last fight, you said in the cage, and we kind of talked about this at the top of the interview, but you mentioned that you had lost it, that you didn't love it anymore. Is this the fight that really makes you feel like you love it again? And you did mention, 2-a-days. Like, how busy is the schedule now, and how much is this occupying your day to day?
Well, I don't know a lot of guys that train as hard as I do, that work a full-time job. I work 55, 60 hours a week, right? My daily schedule is 5 a.m. I go to the gym, I run, I get my lifting in. I try to get some calisthenics or some stretching in. I go to work until 5:30, and then I go to Team Link, and then I'm there until 7:30. And that's 5 days a week. And then I at least get one workout on Saturday somewhere. But since there's some things that have changed, and some things that I think I've reevaluated in myself personally. When I was done fighting, I told myself, I was like, yeah, it's my time. I'm going to not worry as much about my diet. I'm going to just go lift. I want to look pretty or whatever. And then some things happened to me, and I thought, I was the most disciplined guy I knew for a long time, right? Over 14-year career, 12-year career. The last 5 years, I was the most disciplined guy I knew. As far as, I say that with a caveat, I know some absolutely disciplined fighters, don't get me wrong, but if I look at my day-to-day operations and the regular folks that I interact with and deal with, by a lot. I was the most disciplined guy, right? And somewhere I was like, I made an excuse for myself. I don't need to be that disciplined now. Well, guess what? I came to the realization that I operate better that way. My business does, my life does, my personal interactions do. You hear a lot of things about freedom by discipline, and I'm a believer. If I go eat out or I go have a few beers or whatever, and it's scheduled, then it seems to my life just operates better. So this really just fits back into how I want to live.
Where would you say that disciplined lifestyle stemmed from? When did that all begin?
From not being disciplined, being a kid. How about that? I I just wasn't that, and I didn't figure, fighting helped me figure that out, right? I used to tell myself, if I go through a week of this training, especially those my very first two fight camps, a lot of people might not remember this. I was 310 pounds my first fight. I got down to 305, and I trained my guts out, and I fought a state champion wrestler and knocked him out, right? And I got down to 305. It has been a learning process, but the best learning process I could ever have, right? A lot of trial and error. I mean, my fourth fight was against Lewis, and I had to cut weight. I mean, you know what I mean? And through that process, I figured out diet. I figured out how my body responds. I figured out all those things, and I through some of the podcasts I listened to and things like that, Ryan Stewman said, a sales position is like a self-help, self-improvement program with a pay plan. Well, that's what fighting is, right? You have to get better. You have to improve. You eat what you kill. It really goes hand in hand with, how my business operates, how my mindset operates, and it keeps me in track, and I feel better. I feel better about myself. I feel better about, the relationships around me.
How did you get started in MMA? How did you find fighting, and what was that process like to go from stepping into a gym to when you actually made the walk as a fighter for the first time?
I had a childhood. Not that it's an excuse. I mean, a lot of us did, right? We all have trials and errors, right? I wanted to learn how to fight so that I could protect the people that I cared about. That was absolutely first and foremost, through my 16 to 25. I found a jiu-jitsu gym run by Rich Layton back in the Ultimate Fighting days. And I was like, I want to do that. Didn't know about it. I was just a tough kid from whatever. And originally they did some kind of smoker kickboxing fights at a bar in Ogden. I went and signed up. Unfortunately, I had success my first fight, right? I did pretty well. And ironically, Mickey Porritt, my first Muay Thai coach, he wrapped my hands then. That's a weird story. So I go and I fight and I win. I go back and I fight, and it was like USA kickboxing rules or something. So you had to throw like 2 kicks around or something. And I did some Taekwondo when I was a kid. So the second fight, I go out and fight a Golden Gloves boxer that I think did pretty well as a heavyweight. And he mollywopped my ass. He beat the tar out of me. At the end of the fight, and it was 2-minute rounds, it was 3 2-minute rounds. At the end of the fight, I made it all the way through the fight. And you know what it was, is I gassed out. I didn't have any idea. The first fight, I think I just knocked him down. I did the 3-fight knockdown rule in the second round. So I didn't have to go all the way through. Well, I'll tell you what, having zero baseline for what your conditioning should be like is very humbling, very, very humbling. So, I mean, that guy beat the tar out of me. And then I thought, I should figure this out. So I went then you know, within some kind of short amount of time, they ultimate combat started. So I'm watching it on the 30 minutes on Sunday nights, and I'm a fan and stuff. And I find this gym up in Ogden and run by Rich Layton, and I went and I did a couple of years of jiu-jitsu, and then I got into Muay Thai, and just Muay Thai was my thing from there. And then I trained at Fairtex when I lived in California. I trained at Fairtex for 2 years. I trained with George Satsui, who was a K1 champion, for a year. I trained at Frank Shamrock's gym for a while, kind of hopped around a little bit. I got some really good experience, and I had a couple of smokers. I went 5-0 in smokers and amateur kickboxing. And then when I came back here, there was no kickboxing, didn't exist. It was fight MMA or don't. And Fabio says, just take a fight. And I'm like, I don't want to wrestle. But that first fight, that's all I did. It was just takedown defense and make sure that I don't get ridden out and ground and pounded to death. The guy comes out and I defend okay, and then he finally gets me down, breaks my nose, throws a punch up under, breaks my nose. Round ends, go back out, and I throw 1-2. This guy goes like this and takes a step back and tries to throw right, and I throw 1-2 again, and mine's faster, and I knock him out all the way out, like bad out, unconscious. And he's so big, he's 300 pounds. He hits the ground and kind of bounces, right? Huge. And he's out for at least 2 minutes. The paramedics are in there and stuff. He was out for so long. I was like, I really, really hurt this guy bad. And then he kind of finally comes around. And I was obviously relieved he wasn't permanently injured. And then his mom runs up to me and she's like, that was my kid. And I said, well, I'm sorry, ma'am, but he would have done that to me if he'd have got to me first. Right. And then I went and fought for 2 years. I averaged fighting every 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, you've been super active throughout the entirety of your career. And so I am curious. I mean, there was a little bit of time between your last fight and the fight prior to that. Was there another sort of like area or certain point in your life when you weren't taking fights that you thought maybe I might be done, and then you took that one back in 2021?
Yeah, I got my head caved in by Zach Cavender.
I apologize.
Blake, I sit next to you a lot. Your reactions are just priceless to me, because you're like, why would you say that? So when I fought Eti Palu, he fractured my jaw. So 1 year, actually the year I fought Cortez, the last time I fought Cortez and was fighting, I had 56 stitches in my face that year. Well, they never CT scanned my skull. So I had L fractures that never healed around both eyes, and a fracture on my jawline right here that never healed. They just never fused. So for 5 years of me fighting, my jaw was moving when I get hit. And then I fight Cavender, and I go out, and you know, that fight with Cavender, there's some days that you come out and you're just not there. You're just not there, and there's nothing you can do to get yourself there. At least that's been the case in a few of my fights, right? Where I'm warming up, but I'm just not engaged. I'm just not as focused as I should. Something just isn't right. Whatever the magic unicorn dust is, it's just not happening. But then there's fights when you come out, and Donald Cerrone talked about it. You feel like your subconscious is behind you, looking down on your body, and your body's going, and it's like controlling a video game, right? And that's when you're at your best, like a flow state. I just couldn't get there with Zach. I just wasn't there. And went out, had an exchange. He was left-handed. He stepped back, and I wasn't thinking about the left hand, obviously. He stepped back, and when I shucked him off, he was able to pivot and throw right back, and it hit me right there and broke my jaw all the way across. Pushed it back a quarter inch. You know, my face is plated from under my eyes to the top of my teeth. yeah, it makes you think of your mortality when you walk into the doctor's office and he's like, this is what it looks like when somebody hits their steering wheel going 60 miles an hour. That's the same injury, right? If his jaw goes back much farther, it hits his brain. You know, but it's not going to be old age that kills me. And it ain't going to be fighting either.
We love having you on the broadcast. You do an incredible job. And one of the things that I personally love is diving into the experience side of you, because you do have a lot of miles in the tank already. I mean, you've been doing this for a really long time. How much does your experience now, do you hope, will benefit those future fighters coming out of Team Link?
Well, so for instance, we got 3 guys fighting this weekend, right? On the Contender Series. And just if you guys haven't been, and I know this is going to come out after, but if you guys haven't been to one of these fights, it is absolutely worth every dollar, because they have all been awesome. Every one of the ones that I've been able to commentate has been exciting. You get a good blend of guys that don't have a lot of experience, and you get a blend of guys that do. And I think the matchmaking for it's been fantastic. But we got, we have Francisco fighting. It's his debut. The kid's a stud. Been training with us 3 years. Fabio personally has really taken him under his wing, and really kind of groomed him along. The kid's just really super coachable and a stud. And then we have Jordan Munoz coming back. He's been in the gym every day. He looks pretty good. I've been moving around with him a little bit, kind of, which is good for me too, because talking some of these kids through ring strategy, ring control, the how the judges are always biased towards wrestlers, some things like that. It gets it back in me too, right? And it makes me think about it. And then we've got Ben fighting, and I don't know how long Ben's been out, but I know he's very excited to be back in, and he's very focused in the gym. So I'm really excited to see. We haven't had anybody very active really since I was fighting. A lot, I guess, at least on some kind of schedule. We haven't had a lot of guys that have been active since then much. And I'm super happy that they're fighting for Fierce. It's like my home now. I get to commentate with you guys. I fight. It's been great. So I'm really excited for that. If you're a fighter from any gym, I would always be happy to talk to you. Message me, Facebook, whatever, and if you're ever like, God, am I doing the right thing? Well, first off, if you're thinking, am I doing the right thing? You're not. Okay, quit now, because whatever that mentality is, you either have to be obsessed or you're going to get injured. That's all there is to it. You can't you can play boxing, or you can play basketball, and you can play football, but you can't play fighting. You cannot play fighting.
I wanted to ask you really quickly about the commentary side of things. We've mentioned it a few times throughout the interview, but one of my favorite things about just having you around is just everything that you bring, from your humor to obviously your experiences, and also just the technical side of things. But when you were approached to do commentary, or when you asked, I don't remember how that process all came to be, but you came on September of last year and you absolutely knocked it out of the park. What has commentating been like for you? What has it been, or how much have you enjoyed it, I should say, over the last year or so?
Doing it with you and Jason is it's one of the funnest things I do. Okay, I like, it keeps me engaged. Obviously it keeps me relevant. Maybe it keeps me wanting to fight. You know what I mean? Who knows? But it definitely keeps my mind on it, because I'm not necessarily the super fan that's following every fight and stuff like that these days. I'm in the gym a lot. I'm watching fights and stuff like that. Obviously now I make myself watch at least one fight a day, so I can try to pick up some technical aspects and some things like that. But when I'm watching fights, if the commentators, I can learn things watching the fights and listening to good commentators. I can pick things up, right? Maybe some things that I'm not thinking about, or things that I'm not seeing. But I mean, I remember watching like Roy Jones commentate, right? And watching him discuss the fights and what he's seeing in those types of things. So I hope that I can give, I mean, I'm kind of a knucklehead, you know what I mean? I joke around a lot. But I hope that it comes across that way to other people. You know what I hate doing is I hate going to a goddamn Buffalo Wild Wings and watching a fight and having to hear, why doesn't he? Well, that's what happened at the fight I went to. That's what happened with the last fight I went to, when that kid took a swing at me in the stands. Why don't you? And I finally said, look, I know a guy, we'll get you a contract, bud. You think you can do better than them? He got real big upset at me. He didn't think I was as funny as I thought I was.
Closing out the interview, I do just want to give you one more opportunity. We talked about him at the top of the interview, but what is the number one thing you are looking forward to as you make the walk on November 17th?
Putting it all together. I'm changing my mindset. So by nature, I'm a very I hate using motivated. I'm a disciplined person, right? But I'm extremely goal oriented. Some of the things that make me successful at work very much translate to the things that make me successful there, right? I think that I'm the hardest worker in the room, and if I'm not, I'll make sure I am. But sometimes that means I take too far, right? You never know how far you can go until you've gone too far. Well, I take things to where I am, second by second analyzing it, or trying to see where I've gone wrong. Overthinking, right? Overthinking kills overcoming. I'm trying to take this fight, to be honest with you, in more of a playful aspect. This is fun. It used to be fun. It used to be the funnest thing I could do, right? I get a rush that you couldn't get anywhere else, that, was better than anything. And it honed my discipline, it honed my diet, and it honed all these things. But that doesn't mean that I have to look at it like it's a job, or like it's you hear a lot of wrestlers say, embrace the grind. Look, it's not a grind if you get to do it. I mean, you get to do it, right? You can do it. You're physically capable of doing it. So is it a grind, or is it a privilege? And that's how I'm looking at it. It's a privilege. I'm 45 years old. Except for that last guy in that fight, I'm probably the oldest guy currently actively fighting. Third?
Yeah, you're second. You're second. Once you make the walk, you'll be the second oldest.
Look at me. I don't even know what to say. But anyway, I'm still in some of the best shape I've ever been in. Just honing my cardio and my timing. That's really all I need. I just am looking at this like, not necessarily like a game, because a game doesn't have dire consequences, right? A game would be basketball. But like, if you see me play in the gym when I'm sparring, and how I'm moving and how fast I am, that's where I need to be. Not overly concerned about winning, overly concerned about I talked to Randy Couture once, and he said, the people that love you will still love you whether you win or lose. You should just go out there and fall to your level of training. That's the mindset that I'm there. And I still think at 45 years old, I'm one of the fastest heavyweights in the state. I'm going to go prove it.
I absolutely cannot wait for it. I think everyone in Utah cannot wait for it. The return of Eric Iman, Luis Cortez 3. It's going to be a fun one on the most stacked card of the year, November 17th at the Maverick Center. Eric, thank you so much.
Hey, can I say I'm super excited that I get to share a card with Mr. Mafaleo too. Blake, I always appreciate your time. Give some to Jason for me, and I'll see you on Saturday.